Ladies and gentlemen, the difference between staying in the same place and changing your life is often just one bold step. We spend our lives waiting for the right time, the right opportunity, the right feeling. But let me ask you, what if it never comes? What if the right time is simply the moment you decide to stop hesitating? The first step is often the hardest, because it requires something deeper than skill, preparation, or even motivation. It requires inner permission. The mind is naturally conditioned to seek safety, and safety is found in the known, in routine, and in what is familiar. When we consider taking a bold step, whether it's starting something new, leaving something behind, speaking our truth, or confronting a fear, we are essentially stepping outside of our comfort zone and into the unknown. This unknown brings uncertainty, and with it, doubt. That is why the first step feels so heavy. It carries the weight of every hesitation, fear, and what if that has ever whispered in our mind. What we don't often realize is that all movement in life begins with this initial resistance. Before a seed breaks through the ground, there is a push against pressure. Before the muscles grow, there is the resistance of weight. And before transformation takes place, there is a moment of discomfort, a question that arises. Can I really do this? That question is not there to stop us. It is there to test us. The first step demands that we act not when we are ready, but when we are willing. And willingness is not about certainty, it is about the courage to proceed without it. Many people spend their lives trapped not by circumstances, but by the inability to take the first step, for clarity, for perfect timing, for fear to vanish completely. But that moment rarely comes. Instead, clarity often comes only after we begin. It is the step itself that activates learning, feedback, adjustment, and confidence. Could change. But this paradox is what traps many. They want the feeling of certainty before taking the action that brings certainty. What could change? This is why the first step feels so difficult. It asks us to believe without evidence, to move before we see the results, to trust something internal more than external. And yet, this is precisely why it's so powerful. The first step sets a direction. It is a declaration, both to ourselves and to the world, that we are no longer willing to remain where we are. It shifts the energy from passive to active, from wishing to doing, from hesitation to intention. Once it is taken, something profound happens. The fear that once appeared massive begins to shrink. Our mind, once crowded with doubts, begins to clear as focus replaces confusion. Taking that first action proves something vital. We are not stuck. We are not incapable, we're only paused, waiting for a moment of resolve to rise above the noise of hesitation. No one ever becomes great by thinking about it alone. Mastery, growth, wisdom, and confidence are built through experience, and experience requires initiation. The first step is the bridge between the idea of change and the reality of it, and yet, people often confuse preparation with progress. You can read all the books, gather all the advice, and plan every detail. But until movement begins, nothing changes. The first step breaks inertia, and in doing so, it unlocks access to the second, third, and 100th step. Without it, the journey remains a thought, a dream that never enters reality. Even when we fall after the first step, we are still further than where we began. Failure after action is growth. Failure without action is just imagination. That is why boldness at the beginning matters so much. Because it doesn't guarantee immediate success, it guarantees motion. And motion is life. The moment you take that step, you prove to yourself that your fears, while loud, are not in control. You take back authority over your choices. You replace hesitation with momentum. You honor possibility more than you serve comfort. And from that moment, everything begins to shift. Boldness is often mistaken as something spontaneous. Something that arises when the moment feels right or the heart is suddenly filled with confidence. But in truth, boldness is not a spark that waits for perfect emotional conditions. It is a decision, one that is practiced, refined, and repeated over time until it becomes a way of being. Boldness, then, is not a feeling to wait for, but a discipline to build. It is the conscious choice to act. Even when fear is present, even when the mind hesitates, and especially when comfort tries to hold you back. Feelings are unpredictable. They shift with weather, with mood, with circumstance. One day you may feel courageous, the next you may feel paralyzed. If you anchor your life in waiting for the right emotional state, your actions will be inconsistent. You'll move only when it feels easy or exciting, and freeze when it feels uncertain. But discipline removes the need to feel bold in order to act boldly. Discipline trains you to do what is necessary despite how you feel. And that is the great power of discipline. It doesn't eliminate fear, it simply refuses to obey it. People often admire the bold. Those who speak their truth, take risks, lead with clarity, or step into challenge without guarantees. But rarely do they see the invisible repetitions behind that boldness. Kench. They don't see the daily choices, the small acts of courage that built that person's character. Boldness is not built in a single moment of glory, it is forged in quiet, unseen moments of choosing discomfort over delay, truth over silence, action over hesitation. That is what makes it a discipline. It is practiced like a craft. Like martial arts, like meditation, like any form of mastery. It must be exercised to grow. Discipline is a structure that holds you up when emotion wants to pull you down. On days when self-doubt speaks loudly, discipline reminds you of your purpose. On days when fear whispers reasons to avoid, discipline gives you a framework to proceed anyway. Over time, this creates a shift in identity. Change. You stop seeing yourself as someone who needs to feel brave to act, could change. You begin seeing yourself as someone who simply chooses boldness, because it is aligned with your path. This shift is quiet but transformative. You move from being reactive to intentional, from passive to powerful. One of the common misunderstandings is that only the confident are bold. The bold are rarely confident before they begin. Their confidence is the result, not the prerequisite. Discipline fills the gap between fear and movement. It says, I will act, not because I am unafraid, but because I have trained myself to prioritize purpose over comfort. The more you do this, the more natural it becomes. The less dependent you become on mood, motivation, or external validation. Boldness becomes your standard, not your exception. And this has ripple effects in every part of life. Every time you speak up when it's easier to stay quiet. Every time you choose to begin when your mind tells you to wait. Every time you take action before you're fully ready. You are training boldness as a discipline. You are building a pattern of integrity between your in-knowing and your outer actions. Over time, this makes you steady, reliable, and deeply aligned. Others may still see it as bravery, but you will know it as training. You will know that behind every bold move is 100 small disciplined choices no one saw. And that is the truth of lasting courage. It is not something you have. It is something you live. Boldness is often misunderstood as a sudden surge of confidence or a rare emotional state that arrives in critical moments. People wait for the feeling of boldness to strike them, as if courage is something that must be felt deeply before any action can be taken. But the truth is, boldness is not a fleeting feeling. It is a discipline. It is a way of acting in the world that is chosen, cultivated, and strengthened over time through repeated decisions to show up despite discomfort. While emotions may come and go, discipline is built through practice. And when it comes to boldness, the people who appear most courageous are usually the ones who have made boldness a habit, not just a mood. Relying on emotions to fuel action is unreliable because emotions are inconsistent. One day you may wake up feeling brave, the next you may feel paralyzed by doubt. If you only act when you feel bold, your life will be shaped by inconsistency. You'll miss chances, avoid growth, and fall into patterns of hesitation. But when boldness becomes a discipline, your choices are no longer dictated by how you feel. You don't wait to feel ready. You decide to act because you've trained yourself to do so. This approach turns boldness into something steady and dependable, rather than occasional and fragile. Discipline does not ignore fear. It simply refuses to obey it. The disciplined mind acknowledges fear, recognizes its presence, still proceeds with what needs to be done. Boldness in this sense is not loud or dramatic. It's quiet, steady, and intentional. Change. It's the decision to speak when silence is easier. It's the action taken when waiting feels safer.
Good change.
It's the posture of a person who has decided that their values, their goals, and their integrity matter more than the discomfort of the moment. This kind of boldness doesn't arise from hype or adrenaline. It arises from a deep inner commitment to live in alignment with purpose, no matter the cost. Building boldness as a discipline begins in the small moments. Moments when no one is watching, when there's no reward waiting could change, and when the only thing at stake is your own self-respect. These are the moments that train you. They build your identity, teach you that you are the kind of person who acts in spite of fear, not because fear is absent. And with each repetition, boldness becomes more natural. It becomes part of your character, not just a temporary state. There is a kind of freedom that comes with this discipline. When boldness becomes part of who you are, you stop second-guessing yourself so much. You stop being paralyzed by every new challenge. You know how to respond because you've practiced change. You've trained your mind and body to move forward rather than retreat. And in doing so, you build resilience, confidence, and inner peace, not because life becomes easier, but because you've become stronger. Boldness as a discipline also means accepting the possibility of failure without being controlled by it. You no longer need guarantees in order to take action. You understand that outcomes matter less than alignment. Question becomes not, will I succeed? But, is this the right thing to do? And if the answer is yes, then you act. That is what separates those who talk about change from those who create it. The disciplined, bold person knows that fear, rejection, and uncertainty are all part of the path, and they walk it anyway. Living this way is not about being fearless, loud, or aggressive. It's about being steady, intentional, and committed to truth. It's about refusing to shrink when the moment asks you to rise, could change. It's about building a way of life where boldness is no longer something you hope for. It's something you choose, over and over again, until it becomes who you are. When we are faced with uncertainty, the natural instinct is to stop and think. We analyze, question, predict, and plan. We attempt to map out every possible outcome, hoping that with enough thought, the right answer will present itself. But what often happens is the opposite. The more we think, the less we move. The more we try to plan perfectly, the more paralyzed we become. Overthinking does not bring clarity, it often deepens confusion. This is because clarity is not something that exists purely in the mind. It is something that is revealed through movement, through direct engagement with reality, through action. The mind is a powerful tool, but it was never meant to be the sole guide for decision-making. It works best when it responds to real experiences, not imagined scenarios. Action creates a feedback loop. It gives us information that thinking alone cannot provide. When you take a step forward, even if it's small, even if it's uncertain, you create motion. That motion allows you to learn. It shows you what works, doesn't, how you respond, and what your next move could be. This is something thinking cannot replicate. Theoretical clarity lacks the weight of experience, change. Real clarity comes from the refinement that action provides. People often believe they need to have everything figured out before they begin, but no one ever builds mastery or transformation by waiting for certainty. Those who achieve meaningful change do so by starting with what they know and allowing the path to unfold as they go. They understand that they cannot think their way into a perfect beginning. They trust that doing reveals more than waiting ever could. It's like walking through fog, change. You don't see the whole road from where you stand, but the moment you take a few steps, more of the path becomes visible. Then you take more steps, then more is revealed. Eventually, you realize that movement was the only way forward. Overthinking can feel productive. It gives the illusion of control. You feel like you're doing something, when in truth, you're avoiding the discomfort of starting. The mind spins in circles, reviewing the same options, the same doubts, the same fears, but it rarely creates progress. Progress requires contact with the world. It requires risking mistakes, facing challenges, and adapting in real time. This is why action is so powerful. It breaks the loop. It replaces guesswork with experience. It transforms fear into information. And most importantly, it teaches you about yourself in ways that thinking never could. When you act, you encounter your real limits, not the imagined ones shaped by doubt. You test your beliefs. You see what habits support you and which ones sabotage you. You find your voice, your strength, and your direction not by thinking more clearly, but by moving more intentionally. Clarity is not a destination you reach by standing still. It is a companion that arrives as you walk forward. With every decision, every mistake, every adjustment, you become more grounded in what matters. You refine your sense of direction. You learn what aligns with you, and what does not. This kind of understanding cannot be learned in a book, or a journal alone. It must be lived. So many people are stuck in life not because they lack intelligence, because they believe clarity must come first. They wait for the perfect moment, the perfect answer, the perfect plan. But the truth is, clarity is a reward for those who begin. It is revealed, not invented. It meets those who are willing to take the risk of starting, without knowing everything. When you move, you learn. When you learn, you grow. When you grow, clarity follows. The only mistake is to wait too long in fear of getting it wrong. Could change. Because the only thing worse than a wrong move is no move at all. Fear is one of the most universal human experiences. It arrives the moment we consider stepping into the unknown, the moment we decide to grow, the moment we contemplate change. Many people believe that in order to move forward with confidence or purpose, they must first eliminate fear. They wait for the fear to go away, thinking that once it disappears, they'll be ready. But this belief is what keeps them stuck. Fear does not vanish before we act. It walks beside us as we do. It is not a barrier to growth, but a companion to it. Waiting for fear to disappear before taking action is like waiting for silence in a storm. It's not realistic, and it's not necessary. The truth is, change. Fear is not always the enemy. Fear is a signal. It shows up when you're about to do something that matters, could change. It appears when you're standing at the edge of something meaningful. That nervousness, that tightness in your chest, that whisper in your mind that tells you to retreat. It's not weakness. It's your system's way of alerting you to risk, to uncertainty, to vulnerability. Growth always requires those things. If there's no uncertainty, then there's no newness. If there's no risk, then there's no transformation. Fear, in this sense, is the price of expansion. People often try to fight their fear, to suppress it or deny it. But what if the path isn't to fight at all? What if the path is to acknowledge it, breathe with it, and move anyway? Courage is not the absence of fear. It is movement in the presence of it. To walk with fear means to let it exist without letting it control you. It means accepting that the shaking hands, the racing heart, the inner doubt may all still be present, and still choosing to step forward. The power of walking with fear is that it trains you to act from intention, not from reaction. You're no longer waiting to feel brave. You are living bravely by showing up even when fear is loud. When you walk with fear long enough, something profound happens. It stops feeling like a wall and starts feeling like a signal. It becomes familiar, not because it disappears, because you've met it so many times that it no longer surprises you. You learn its voice. You understand its rhythm. And most importantly, could change. You learn that fear never had the power to stop you, only the power to influence your choices. That influence weakens with every step you take. Could change. The more you move with fear, the more trust you build in yourself. You stop seeing fear as a warning to turn back, and start seeing it as a sign that you are on the edge of something important. Avoiding fear often leads to regret. The unspoken truth is that the opportunities we miss, the chances we don't take, the words we never say, are not because we weren't capable. They are because we let fear make the decision. And fear is only good at one thing: keeping you where you are. But staying where you are, when your heart is calling for more, is its own kind of suffering. It is slow, quiet, invisible suffering. The kind that eats away at your potential. Walking with fear is uncomfortable, yes, but it is the kind of discomfort that leads to growth, not stagnation. Life will never guarantee a path without fear. If it did, it would also be a life without challenge, without meaningful progress. Every bold move, every creative leap, every honest conversation, every moment of transformation comes with fear in the background. That's normal. That's human. The goal is not to become fearless, but to become fear-wise. Change. To know how to carry it without letting it dictate the way forward. When you make space for fear, but move forward anyway, you take back control. You stop being driven by comfort, and start being guided by conviction. Every meaningful pursuit in life involves some degree of risk. Whether it's starting something new, ending something familiar, speaking your truth, or choosing an unfamiliar path, there is always a chance of failure, rejection, or discomfort. This is the nature of movement. To leave behind certainty is to enter into the possibility of both growth and pain, but risk alone is not enough to create transformation. What turns risk into something valuable, something that helps you evolve, is purpose. When your actions are rooted in something greater than temporary pleasure or ego validation, risk stops being just a threat and starts becoming a tool. Purpose gives meaning to what you're doing. It becomes the why that gives direction to the how, even when the how is hard. Without purpose, risk can feel reckless. It can become a habit of chasing thrill or proving something to others. But when anchored in purpose, the same risk becomes intentional. It becomes part of a larger vision. You're no longer taking action just to move, you're moving with clarity. You understand that discomfort is not punishment. It's part of the process. Growth is rarely easy, and most of the time it's uncomfortable. But that discomfort becomes bearable, even meaningful, when it's connected to a reason that matters to you deeply. Purpose is what allows you to endure the storm could change, to keep going when the rewards are far away, when the doubts are loud, and when the outcome is uncertain. Purpose makes failure easier to face because it gives context. If your purpose is strong, even setbacks become lessons. You don't see failure as evidence that you should quit, but as feedback on the journey. You learn, adjust, and continue. Growth is not linear, and no path is free from obstacles. But when you are aligned with purpose, you are more resilient. You see beyond the temporary pain. You see why it's worth it. That vision becomes your fuel. Purpose doesn't remove risk, but it transforms it into something useful. Instead of paralyzing you, it refines you. Instead of stopping you, it strengthens you. When you live without purpose, even small challenges feel heavy. You're more likely to retreat, to choose the easy way, to abandon what could help you grow. But with purpose, even large challenges become meaningful. You see them as part of the story you're writing, part of the person you're becoming. Purpose gives you the courage to say yes to difficult things because you trust in what they will create in you. You stop seeking only comfort and begin seeking alignment. The question shifts from, is this risky? To, is this aligned with who I want to become? That shift alone can redefine your entire experience of growth. There is no transformation without risk. And there is no way to eliminate risk entirely. But there is a way to make that risk worthwhile. Purpose is what turns discomfort into development, fear into fuel, and obstacles into opportunities. It helps you find meaning even in the struggle, but could change. You start to see that the risks you take are not just about the outcome. They are about the process of becoming. Every challenge you face, purpose makes you more aware, more grounded, and more capable. You begin to respect the growth process rather than resent it. You don't just chase results. You value the person you're becoming along the way. In a world full of distractions, noise, and shallow pursuits, purpose brings depth. It is your inner compass, guiding you toward choices that matter. And when you risk for something that matters, you grow in ways that cannot be measured from the outside. You grow in character, in discipline, in clarity, and in wisdom. That is the real reward. Not just achieving something, but becoming someone. Risk becomes less frightening when you know it's in service of something real. And in the end, could change. It is not the avoidance of risk that defines your life, but the intention behind the risks you're willing to take.